Welcome to The Explainer. Ever wonder what really happens behind the scenes when a company gets hacked? Well, today, we're going to go inside the war room and see how organizations actually defend themselves, from the core principles they live by to the playbooks they pull out when everything hits the fan. Let's get into it.
You know, it almost always starts with a simple, chilling message. Let's imagine a cloud services firm. We'll call them HAL, Hierarchical Access Ltd. For them, these are the three words that just crackled over the emergency line. And for any organization, this is that moment of truth.
So at HAL, a system administrator spots a huge red flag, this sudden, massive spike in failed login attempts. But when they dig into the logs, there's no sign of anyone breaking in from the outside. And that's when the chilling realization hits. The call is coming from inside the house. All signs point to an insider threat, the one kind of attack that can just walk right past all your strongest digital walls.
Now, this isn't just a technical glitch. It's a full-blown test of the organization's preparedness. In a crisis like this, the first move isn't to panic. It's to follow a process. And that process is all laid out in the incident response plan they built for this exact kind of moment.
And look, HAL's crisis isn't some unique, one-off event. It's really just a snapshot of a universal challenge, where the stakes are incredibly high for everyone, from the giant global corporations all the way down to the small business on your street.
Let's try to put the threat into perspective for a second. There are about 4.5 billion people online. Now, if less than 0.1% of them decide to cause trouble, you're looking at over 4.5 million potential attackers. That's a huge decentralized army out there.
So, you might ask, how prepared are we to face this army? Well, according to one survey, only about 55% of organizations feel like they could actually recover their core systems after a major disaster. That's basically a coin flip, which shows a massive gap between the threat and the readiness to handle it. And for small businesses, the consequences are even more brutal. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, estimates that up to 60% of small businesses that suffer a major data disaster never reopen their doors. We're not just talking about losing files here. We're talking about losing everything. The business, the jobs, all of it.
You know, history shows us again and again that preparation is what separates survival from total collapse. A lot of companies in the World Trade Center actually survived the 2001 attack because the 1993 bombing had forced them to create contingency plans. So, how do you prepare for the unpredictable? You start by building on a rock-solid foundation.
To solve their problem, the team at HAL is going to turn to a core principle, a concept that guides pretty much all of information security. This is the bedrock on which every defense is built.
Now, here's what's so critical about this definition. InfoSec, or information security, isn't just about protecting computers and servers. It's about protecting the value of the information itself. And to do that, security pros use a really simple but incredibly powerful model.
And here it is. This is the model. It's called the CIA triad. That stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So let's break that down. Confidentiality: can only the right people see the data. Integrity: is the data accurate, complete, and trustworthy? And availability: can the right people get to the data when they actually need it? Back at HAL, that insider threat puts all three of these at risk. If they steal client data, confidentiality is blown. If they change records, integrity is lost. And if they lock everyone out of the system, availability is destroyed. You fail on any one of these, and the value of your information just tanks. Okay, so if you're trying to protect the CIA triad, where do you start? Well, first, you have to understand what you're up against. You have to know your enemy. And the threats, they come from all directions. Security experts track at least 12 different categories. This is just a little sample, but you can see the dangers range from deliberate sabotage and complex software attacks to, simple human error or even natural disasters. And the line from one of those threats to total disaster can be frighteningly short and direct. On the left, you've got a piece of malicious code somebody shared on a hacker forum. On the right, you see the result: a stolen database packed with customer credit card numbers. One little script, catastrophic damage. But modern attacks, they don't just go after the machines, they go after the people. Phishing is a perfect example of this. It's an attack that's based entirely on deception, a fake email that looks real, designed to trick an employee into just handing over the keys to the kingdom. This is why the human element is one of the most critical, and honestly, one of the most vulnerable parts of any defense.
All right, so you get the stakes and you've identified the enemy. How do you actually build your defense? Well, it all comes down to creating a playbook, a formal strategy that everyone in the organization, from the top down, understands and follows.
And that playbook really has two main parts. You've got high-level policy, and you've got practical risk management. Think of it like this. Policy sets the rules of the game, the what and why. It defines what you can and can't do. Risk management is your strategy for playing the game, the how. It's how you spot threats and figure out what to do about them.
And policy isn't just one giant document. It's a hierarchy that turns big ideas into daily actions. It's kind of like a funnel. At the very top, you have a high-level policy that says all employees must use strong passwords. Okay, great. Then, standards get more specific and define what strong actually means, like say 12 characters with symbols. Then procedures give you the step-by-step instructions on how to change your password. And finally, guidelines offer helpful but non-mandatory advice.
This ancient wisdom from Sun Tzu, it's the absolute heart of modern risk management. Knowing yourself means understanding your own assets, what's valuable and where you're weak. Knowing the enemy means understanding the threats you face. For the team at Hale, this means knowing their own network inside and out, so they can spot what the insider is doing.
So how does this work in practice? Well, risk management is a structured cycle. First, you identify your risks. Then, you analyze just how bad they could be. Next, you evaluate whether that level of risk is acceptable. And if it's not, you treat the risk. You apply controls to knock it down to a level you can live with. The team at HAL right now is living this process in real time.
All of this brings us to what is maybe the most crucial takeaway of all, the mindset. This is what separates the organizations that survive from the ones that don't. Security is a process, not a product. Your defensive playbook is never truly finished.
Right. You can't just buy a firewall, install it, and then call it a day. It doesn't work that way. Effective security is not a one-time fix. It is a continuous cycle. The threat landscape is always changing, with new attacks and new bad guys popping up every single day. And that means your defense has to evolve right along with it through constant assessment, constant improvement, and constant vigilance.
Which brings us right back to that frantic phone call at HAL. Ultimately, the goal isn't to magically predict every single possible attack. That's impossible. The goal is to build the institutional muscle, the plans, and the resilience to withstand the unexpected. The real question isn't if a crisis will happen, but when it does, will you be ready?